Hello and welcome back, goats, to the BigBluePurple channel. Today I want to talk about the newest Extreme Trial that was recently added in patch 6.5. This is the Abyssal Fracture, aka Zeromus. Now, to be completely honest with you guys, when this trial was announced, I was not necessarily that excited for it, and I didn't even end up doing the Extreme until a couple weeks after it came out because I just had not a lot of interest in it this time. That being said, now having done the fight several times, I actually think this is one of the better Extreme Trials that's come out this expansion, and I am pleasantly surprised by how much I've been enjoying it. First of all, the music in this fight is absolutely spectacular, some of my favorite music to have come out of this expansion so far. I also appreciate the fact that this trial has not one but two songs tied to it due to the kind of final phase of this fight where a completely different song comes into play. Something I honestly appreciate about this fight, especially coming after Golbez, is just how much more relaxing and forgiving this one is, especially when you're farming it. It's not a constant fear of who's gonna fuck up and cause a wipe on one of these body checks, because there actually are 0 body checks in this fight. It doesn't matter if someone dies, it's always going to be recoverable. This obviously makes for a significantly easier Extreme Trial than I think we've been used to this expansion. It's more so akin to something like Zodiark in terms of difficulty, maybe a little bit harder because it has some more personal responsibility. Like, you can't just follow one guy the whole time, but it is a massive step down in difficulty from Barb and Golbez. So I can definitely understand why some people might be a little bit disappointed with this one if they were expecting a more grandiose conclusion for the final trial of Endwalker, something that's going to push the boundaries of difficulty. This isn't that. I personally find this trial to be very enjoyable in its own right though, and it does things that I personally really enjoy in this game, which is just a very simplistic and dodgy fight that's all about using your eyeballs and adjusting to what you're seeing on the screen. I think this would be a particularly good Extreme Trial to show someone who wants to start raiding for the very first time ever. And the reason I say that is because this trial, more so than pretty much any other Extreme I've done in this game, only punishes you for your own mistakes, except for in the Meteor Mechanic, which we'll talk about specifically, but otherwise, any other place in this fight that you make a mistake and you die, you will be the only person that dies for that mistake. And so it's not as punishing. Let's say you're a newer raider and you're not grasping these mechanics at the pace of other people in your party, you're not going to necessarily be holding anyone back. It also makes it so when you're someone who's farming the fight and you're very comfortable with the fight, it's not super frustrating seeing people in your party take a death here and there because you know it's not a big deal. It's a huge contrast to Golbez, which is still one of my favorite extremes this expansion, but it's a very punishing extreme in comparison. One mistake at the wrong time can easily wipe the entire group. Speaking of wiping the entire group though, it's important that we talk about the Meteor Mechanic here. So if anything's going to wipe you in this fight, it's this mechanic. Basically, supports and DPS will be tethered in a random order, and these tethers will drop a meteor on the player. You need to make sure that the meteor you drop doesn't touch another meteor. If it does, it will kill everybody. So the two ways that you can choose to do this is you can stretch your tether correctly so that it's a solid gold color line, and this won't kill you and it won't kill the party either. Or if you find that you don't have space to stretch your tether without turning it red for whatever reason, you can sacrifice yourself by not stretching the tether and it will only kill you. So one of the biggest things to learn in this fight early on is that it's much better that you kill yourself alone and not the entire party by stretching the meteor too far. Otherwise, as you're seeing in the footage right now, this mechanic is so much of this kind of fun movement, dodging around, stacks, spreads, watching debuffs. It's a lot of fun, it feels fast-paced, but everything it's asking you to do is incredibly simple. There are several segments in the fight where the boss will just vomit these AoEs all over the floor and then give everyone spread markers, and it's not hard to spread out on this massive arena, but it feels tight when you have all these giant AoEs going off everywhere. And this leads into one of my favorite mechanics in this entire fight, which is this black hole here. Basically, one player will get a defamation marker, which drops the black hole from normal mode on the ground. You can drop this pretty much anywhere, but the whole party needs to be on the same page and pay attention to where the person is dropping it so they can move out of the way without getting touched by it. What makes this mechanic so fun is just how threatening that damn black hole is, and how funny it is to see someone in your party just get launched into oblivion because they got too close to it. Again, this isn't a difficult dodge at all, but the game does a good job at making you feel tense throughout the entire mechanic. I also really enjoy how much agency the party has over this mechanic. Where you place the black hole determines how you're going to be dodging both the laser coming out of his mouth and the black hole itself. There's some really cool melee uptime strats here where if a melee gets selected for the black hole, they can place it in the top corner while maintaining uptime, and as long as the party's on the same page, they can all still successfully avoid the black hole. A very simple mechanic, but it incorporates kind of a new type of attack, this black hole, which is very threatening and has its own kind of fun, goofy feel to it, where, you know, running away from that thing or watching your teammates get sucked into it is absolutely hilarious. And on the topic of running away from the black hole and that type of thing, I just love how much movement there is in this fight compared to a lot of other extreme trials. You know, that's something I kind of worried about given that this is a wall boss. The biggest problem with wall bosses is that there's no positionals, there's no boss positioning for the tanks to worry about, and so with that, they need to do something unique with the arena to keep it engaging in one way or another. And I think with this fight specifically, they basically just designed all the mechanics in a way where you need to constantly be moving around back and forth from all these different parts of the arena. The outgoing damage in this fight is also a bit higher than other extremes, or at least it seems that way. Zeromus throws Doom at you, so the healers actually need to top everyone off for that, and he'll do a giant stack marker which does tons of damage. Branding Flare and Sparking Flare is kind of the last main mechanic you need to worry about. For this one, if it's sparking, that means it's going to be spreads, and if it's branding, that means it's going to be buddies. I just remember it by B for buddies and S for spreads. This is also followed by 2 random players getting those kind of chasing AoEs from normal mode. We handle this pretty simply by having them run along the north and south sides of the arena without ever going through the middle, because the party's just going to stand in the middle. That way, you know, the 2 people with the chasing AoEs can use everywhere around the arena. Otherwise, at this point in the fight, he just keeps looping mechanics until you get him low enough to enter his kind of final push phase. This final phase that he enters after casting Rend the Rift is one of the coolest parts about this fight in my opinion, and it sets it apart from pretty much any other extreme trial. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before. Rather than being like a typical phase 2 or something, Zeromus enters this almost enraged state where he starts spamming these AoEs on the ground, alternating between these different mechanics such as stack markers, spreads, and enumerations. It's very similar to how this final push is in normal mode. It's a lot faster paced though, and there's more things to keep track of. Like I said, it could be enumerations, it could be spread, it could be stack. This part of the fight is quite literally the epitome of what I'm talking about when I say a fun, dodgy, fast-paced fight. There's no knowledge check in this final push. It's very likely that the first time you get to this part of the fight, you will clear, because there's no knowledge check, there's no, oh, I wasn't ready for this mechanic so I died. It's really just an eyeball check of can you see what the boss is doing and can you dodge it. This also does a good job at building tension, especially your first couple times clearing this fight. It's not that the phase is necessarily hard, it's just the music changes, the environment changes, the visuals change, and now you're kind of in this intense final push to victory. I really enjoyed this segment of the fight, and I'm glad it ends up feeling much more complete here in Extreme than it did back in normal mode. When I had initially done the normal mode of this trial, I was just left completely confused what the point of that final stretch was at all, because the boss just died immediately after. And as you can see, this was my first ever time getting this far into the fight. This is my first clear that you're seeing right now. I died in this phase because there was pressure. I wasn't sure what was going on. I had a hard time keeping track of all the different shit on the screen because I was just new to this part of the fight, and it created a lot of fun tension the first time I was here. Also, if you're a melee DPS, it's very fun trying to find an opening on when you can get an LB off here, because he just spams so many AoEs on the floor, you have to kind of find an opening where you can LB without getting hit by them. All in all, I really appreciate this final stretch for trying something new. It's not just like oh, there's a cutscene and now the boss is in a phase 2 where he does all these different mechanics. It's like this enraged, feral form of Zeromus where now he's just throwing everything he has at you in this desperate push. Otherwise, I'm not actually sure if this fight has a true Enrage. I imagine it does, because, I mean, pretty much every extreme has an Enrage. but I have had some very long kill times of this fight and still have never seen Enrage. It almost feels like in this final phase he literally just loops mechanics until he dies, so I'm not entirely sure. Let me know in the comments if there's actually an Enrage on this fight or not. Overall though, I find this fight to be a very pleasant surprise, especially given how low my expectations were. 6.5 is easily the patch I've looked forward to the least in my entire time playing this game now, and I'm grateful that at least this extreme trial was something good to come out of it. But anyway, now that we have all the Endwalker extreme trials for this expansion in the game, I think I'd like to make a kind of ranking video, worst to best of the extreme trials. In the past, I ranked the normal mode trials for all of the expansions from A Realm Reborn to Shadowbringers, and I had initially just planned to rank the normal modes for Endwalker, but since I've actually done all the extremes this time, it would probably be more interesting to rank those. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'll probably put up a poll on my community tab on, like, would you guys like to see the normal trials? Would you guys just like to see the extremes? Do you guys want to see separate videos for both? Because I actually really enjoy ranking content and kind of thinking through in my head, do I like this better than this or whatever. I really enjoy making videos like that, so if you guys want me to cover normal and extreme, then I would be happy to do so. Also, I would love to hear what you guys think of this trial in the comments below. Did you happen to enjoy it as much as I did? Did you find that it exceeded your expectations, that it met your expectations, or was it disappointing to you? At least I think one thing we can all agree on when it comes to this fight is that the music absolutely fucking slaps. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Remember to drop a like on the video, but only if you did, and subscribe to the Big Blue Purple channel if you're not already. I make near weekly Final Fantasy XIV uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.